Hi there, welcome to this, the first in a couple of videos we're doing to celebrate the alliance between PA and Microsoft and talk about the work we're doing to drive positive outcomes across the public sector. Today we're going to be talking about regulation. I'm Matt Bristow and I lead a lot of our work with regulators in PA, with clients including the new regulator for building safety, the Civil Aviation Authority, the Information Commissioner's Office, helping them to solve some of society's biggest challenges, whether that's keeping people safe in their homes or protecting children online.
Hello, I'm Paul McPherson, so I'm the Business Applications Lead for Public Sector at Microsoft, and we work with all elements of public sector, from central government through regulators into wider public sector, health, education, etc., to help drive and enable transformation and business value to be realised through the use of Microsoft technology.
I'm Caroline Wayman. I'm partner at PA Consulting. I lead a lot of our work in financial regulation, so supporting companies who are trying to introduce new regulatory changes. Before I joined PA, I was the Chief Executive at the Financial Ombudsman Service, so I've got a lot of experience at the front line of delivering regulatory change.
I'm Tim Kidd. I'm the UK Commercial Director for Codec. Codec have a strategic partnership with PA and supporting PA in the work that we're doing with Health and Safety Executive about implementing the Building Safety Regulatory Platform. We're a Microsoft implementation partner who specialise in statutory and legislative implementations of technology.
So we're going to talk about three topics today. The first of those is the challenges that regulators are facing, both in terms of responding to a much more volatile world and meeting the increased expectations of consumers and businesses. Then we're going to talk about how Microsoft is responding to this with development of the Power Platform and business applications. And finally, we're going to talk about making it real and what are the top tips that we've observed as Microsoft partners in terms of how regulators can start today to realise value from these technologies. So on the first one of those topics, I'd be remiss, Caroline, if I didn't come to you, the former CEO of a regulator, to ask what challenges are regulators facing today?
I think it's a very busy time for regulators as it is for everybody, and I think most regulators have set out a vision about being much more data-led, and that involves a really significant rethink actually in terms of how they operate. And I think, for many that's not, it's not brand new, that's something that they've been looking at for a while. But I think it's a combination of building some new skills and capabilities within the organisation, obviously working with partners, as we'll come on to. But it's also fundamentally about making sure that the people at the top table have got the experience to ask the right questions and to know how they can be an intelligent client as well. I think it's really important when you are sitting around that table making those decisions, making sure that boards and excos are really well placed to bring the challenge as well as seeing the opportunities.
And is that something you're observing with your client base, Paul?
Absolutely, and I think the thing I'd probably add to that, Matt, is that regulators have to keep us safe, they have to regulate industry, but also they have to react. They have to react to changes that may be instigated by the global macroeconomic climate, unknown or unpredicted shocks. Obviously, it's not that long ago that we come out of the pandemic, and then we see things like the war in Ukraine, etc., all of which are things that are neither planned nor predicted, but can have a huge impact for regulators and for those, whether they be citizens or whether they be companies, that they both safeguard and inspect and regulate. So how they equip themselves to deal with business as usual, as well as reacting to those unpredicted effects and global shocks in some cases, is a huge challenge.
And that really resonates, I think, with what we're seeing. As PA, we published a report about 4 years ago now called Rethinking Regulators, and we asked our senior network of clients across regulation, are you sitting a bit too comfortably? Now that was 4 years ago. Of course, we were all sitting too comfortably. We've had, as you said, the pandemic, we've had the war in Ukraine, we've now got the huge explosion in generative AI. Regulators have to adapt and stay ahead of their markets on this stuff. And you can't do that if you're locked into old ways of doing things because of the technology that you're using. But I want to move on to this idea of increasing expectation amongst citizens and amongst regulated entities for kind of being treated as customers. Is this something that you've seen, Tim, working with Codec?
Yeah, very much so. Organisations are dealing with increasing volume. Multi-channel is obviously, people don't just work 9 till 5 in many cases anymore. So people want to be able to interact with those organisations whenever they feel that they're able to. And organisations have got to be able to manage that in the most appropriate way. And some of that is about having a unified technology stack that allows them to take in that multimedia inbound messaging, manage that in a structure and a consistent way that delivers a consistent experience for both everybody inside the organisation. I want to be able to see updates and status updates on the thing that I've been contacting you about. And then obviously at the far right hand side of that process, we've got all the reporting that goes with it. The reporting is only ever as good as the structure of the data that we get at the front or from the keyboards that enter that data in.
You talked about efficiency there, and I think when we talk about efficiency in the context of regulation, it's about doing things quicker and again providing a better customer experience, but it's also about freeing staff up to do the high value business of regulation, to go after the bad actors or to be looking at things like innovation hubs or improved guidance, etc. Does that resonate, Caroline, with what you felt as a CEO, and what are the tools that make that kind of higher value stuff easier?
Yeah, that definitely resonates, Matt. I mean, I think one of the real challenges in any regulator is finding the needle in the haystack. And, often things do come into a large organisation, but do you find them? Do you prioritise them? Do you recognise them quickly enough as something that you need to look at? I think is always going to be a challenge. And so I do think that technology and smart use of data can be a massive part of both enabling you to gather that data and those insights and surface them, but also I think freeing up people's time where you do need a human to go and look and see. And it definitely resonates with me as well that I think customer expectations have moved fast, and people don't make an exception for when they're dealing with regulators either. Why should they? It's not like, it's kind of like we expect a certain level of service in all of our interactions now, and for that to be fairly frictionless. And that's quite challenging sometimes for quite complex processes.
And in terms of, I think we've talked there about where regulators want to get to. In terms of adoption of these sorts of platforms that would enable that, what challenges do you see most of all, Tim, within that space?
I think if we looked at Health and Safety Executive as a good example of being able to adopt and adapt when change comes down the line, we've blended what is traditional GDS technology, which is that online experience, together with the capability and the structure and the technical prowess, I guess, of what Microsoft has then in its stack, and being able to bring those two very different worlds, which in some cases have remained quite separate. Some organisations are very pro one or very pro the other, and here we've got a really good blend that is actually bringing the best possible citizen experience or third-party experience in an online world, together with the case management, the structure, the regulatory capability that an organisation like HSE needs. I think that's really important.
Fab, and I think you've moved us on there, Tim, seamlessly to the second of our two key topics. And that is how Microsoft are responding to some of the challenges we see regulators facing with development of the Power Platform and business applications. So I'm going to hand over to Paul from Microsoft, first of all, on this one.
Thank you. So I think the huge opportunity out there is to be able to do things in a quicker, more business agile way, to be able to quickly generate that insight, to make those better decisions, and to be able to deliver those through a highly refined, repeatable process that removes away a lot of the manual and mundane work, so people can actually focus on the high value work in managing a case, a complaint, or in responding to an inspection to create a rating, etc. So how we join up all of those processes, how we join the data up that sits behind them, to put that in the right people's hands at the right time, and in the tools most appropriate to what and how they do their job. So do they spend a lot of their time in Outlook? Do they spend it in a case management system such as Dynamics 365? And how do we enable people to collaborate? So that is as teams and cross department, you know, within a regulator, or is that through multiple channels, you know, with the clients or the citizens affected by that regulator, etc. So it's been able to make better informed decisions, being able to deliver consistent, exemplary processes, and deliver that through multiple channels to basically deliver more consistent, streamlined, effective regulation, inspection, and rating and reporting. And obviously, a lot of where that's going very, very quickly, as we're all aware of, then that really is a huge opportunity for regulators to be able to do things like analyze lots and lots of data, whether that be structured, unstructured, across many, many documents, many, many sources, and to quickly be able to summarize and be able to work on that information that's derived to make better informed decisions. And how we do that, streamlined in the processes in that we work and the tools that we already use, is really where Microsoft is telling a big story, which has been realized by clients around our Copilot model. And there being a Copilot for everything from Office 365 to Dynamics to developer tools such as Power Platform.
Presumably, Caroline, from your vantage point, quite a lot that resonates there in terms of some of the things that you came up against time and time again when trying to adopt these sorts of platforms.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a big part of this which is about the kind of cultural adoption of these tools. And I think, you know, a really important part for leaders to play in how they kind of lead from the front, make sure they stay current actually. But I think the kind of crucial part of it is about not seeing these as needing to be big bang things. I think that really resonates with me. And I think probably quite a lot of senior executives have got war stories of, you know, big projects that run over time, over budget. And so it gives people a natural reticence. So I do think that actually a much more agile approach that enables you to see something in action, change it, try it, do it differently, I think is definitely going to really help actually to get that engagement and to get people seeing what's possible. I think the other thing I'd say is that the best kind of projects work when you get that collaboration between the business owners and the people who really understand what's possible.
I quite agree, and it's getting those kind of groups together to drive at pace, actually. The point around the iteration and this not being seen as a one and done. If you're embarking upon one of these implementations and you're not planning to release tangible value in the first 3 to 6 months, then I think you really need to rethink. And then on the collaboration point, I completely agree. Our success in really getting the best out of the platform at the Building Safety Regulator has been about having policy makers, really kind of dyed-in-the-wool regulators, been doing this for 30 years, operational colleagues who know what it lives and feels like to actually do this stuff, and then the technologists and your DDAT specialists all working together to try and get to the right outcome. And I want to move us on to talk a little bit about innovation. So, you know, of course, well, since Brexit and actually with an election looming as well, government have really expected regulators to step up and do more to promote and to drive innovation. And of course, to regulate for innovation, you have to be an innovative regulator. And what are some of the aspects of the toolkit that we've talked about, Paul, that kind of foster and support that?
I think it's been able to collaborate within an organisation, collaborate with external organisations. It's been able to share data, obviously in a managed and secure way, to ensure that people can make better informed decisions. I think it's given people access to those things, and it's been able to give them access to those types of capabilities within the flow of the role that they perform.
For me, what's interesting about and kind of game-changing about the Microsoft stack now is that it used to be that to customize or to do something with a kind of commercial off-the-shelf product that was not in the mind of the maker, as it were, was a really bad thing. You were kind of breaking it somehow. It wasn't going to be sustainable. It wouldn't be upgradable or maintainable. And you couldn't be further from that truth now in terms of what the extensibility of the business applications, but also the Power Platform gives you to be able to use these tools to do really quite innovative and novel things, whether that's some of the very complex workflow automation we've managed to do at HSE and with other clients, or some of the kind of quite complex algorithmic risk modelling that I'm sure you see with a lot of your financial services clients, Caroline. But But one of the challenges, and I think the barriers to kind of going from that innovation to kind of adoption is the business case and the investment. How did you square or navigate that when you were a regulatory CEO, Caroline, in terms of being able to secure investment for these types of solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a mixture of things. I mean, I think sometimes you have to recognise that there comes a point where actually to be in business that you need to adopt these tools, and I think sometimes it's easy to be too slow to that realisation, because things can go very quickly from wow, isn't it amazing that, you know, someone over here is doing that, to how on earth have you not got that? And I think, you know, again, it's just related to the customer expectation. You kind of get behind that curve at your peril. So I think some of it is about appreciating that at a point in time, some of these areas will be, this is the cost of being in business. And I think that organisations have to kind of wrap their head around that. Then I think it's about being able to very straightforwardly articulate what difference is this going to make? Why is it going to make this better? I mean, my general position when people would bring business cases to the executive would be, if you can't tell me in, you know, 2 or 3 sentences why it's going to make a difference, then no. Because it ought to be capable of that. And if it's not, then you've got to really ask yourself why you're doing it. So I think that ability to really tie it back to, here's what we need to achieve as an organisation. And for regulators, you know, we have statutory objectives and quite clear things which must be done. And actually, it's not too difficult typically to be able to do that. But it's really important that, you know, when business cases come forward, people actually just straightforwardly think about, why is this going to help? But I do think that actually the kind of counter risk of being too slow is just as important to be mindful of as well.
Quite, and in the context of a regulator, frankly, that build-up of technical debt has implications, and potentially very negative implications for all of us, because we're all stakeholders. Fab, thank you for that. So we've talked about the challenges that regulators are facing. We've talked about how Microsoft has responded to that in terms of the development of their platforms. And we've started to talk about what that means for implementation. I'm going to close now by asking each of you for your top tip that our regulator clients can do today to start to realise value from these platforms and make it real. Tim, starting with you.
The pace of technology is evolving at such a rate that so many things are coming down the line now that the IT team will only know so much. And we talked about being an intelligent client. So it's, you know, everybody in the business is business to know technology in some way. They don't need to run it, granted, but they need to have an appreciation of what could it do to help me make my business unit inside an organisation be better.
I think stay focused on your outcomes. I think it's really important to make sure that you're really understanding what it is you're trying to achieve, and you know what that is, and what you're going to measure your success on. Because I think it can be easy to just kind of be committed to a program and potentially to lose sight of that. I think the second thing I'd say is stay current and stay up to date. I think for all of us, as we've been sort of reflecting, technology is not a thing done over there by the IT department. It's all of our business. And so I think for senior leaders, it's really important to make sure that you can continue to provide the right challenge and oversight when you're leading these major programs.
Paul?
I think what's really important for me is to embrace change and embrace technology to enable that change. So projects stop being a technical project, an implementation project. They become a business change program, and that's enabled by technology. So to be outcome-based, value-based, and then to look at what the incremental steps are in actually realizing that value. And I think the first thing to do is, you know, many organizations have already made significant investments in Microsoft technology and the Microsoft Cloud Platform. It is actually to look and say, well, actually, can you leverage what you already have further? And then how can you extend that through the likes of Dynamics and the Power Platform? And I think the other thing that's really important in that is the extensibility of the platform enables you to extend what you have very quickly, easily, and with things like low code to actually drive very, very quick speed to value, both for the regulators themselves and those that they interact with, whether that be industry or whether that be individual citizens, patients, etc.
Great. And I suppose my top tip would be, we've talked a lot about the need for this not to be a one and done, for it to be a constant evolution and iteration of these platforms to keep pace. And that means that when you are choosing partners to work with, it's very important that they're not only a partner that will implement the technology, but that will help you build the enduring capability in-house to foster the right delivery environment, but also to continue getting the best out of the platform. With that, we will wrap up. I'd like to thank all of our guests and their contribution today. If any of what we've said has resonated, please do reach out to PA or to Microsoft or to Codec, and we'd be delighted to talk to you about how you can start your journey with these platforms and to introduce you to some of our clients. Do look out for our next video where we're going to be talking about agile policy making in government, about the government digital standards and how Microsoft tools support those, and very excitingly, artificial intelligence and use of Copilot.